So earlier, Yassar spoke about some of the work that ICF had done exploring how we will meet our net zero goals through SAF. And if I can have the slides back up. Yes, these statistics here show the number of production facilities that will help to meet some of those global goals. And also show the number of jobs that could help be supported or created by the shift to sustainable aviation fuels. And these jobs can be in countries all over the world. So, to explore how we can ensure that no country is left behind in this transition, I'm now going to welcome Michael Rossell, who is Deputy Director General of ACI World, to moderate the next speed panel, which will explore the financing needs of SAF development, particularly the role of blended finance in assisting the developing world to kickstart SAF industries. So, Michael, I'll hand it over to you and your panelists.
Thank you very much, and I invite my panelists to join me on the stage. Very good, thank you. Let's count them up. Excellent, thank you. So, just sort of setting the scene a little bit on this, and I plan to have my panelists do the work and not me. And to note that the conversation that we had in the last panel was very much focused on the North America and the European scene. What we really want to do in this panel is to go a bit more into detail in what can happen around the rest of the world, and to recognize that at the conference on aviation and alternative fuels 2 weeks ago, the conclusion was very much one that the developing world needs to be part of the process. It was very clear that the target of 5% carbon intensity improvement applied globally. It recognized that some parts of the world will be able to move more quickly than others. But the message came across loud and clear that the developing world does not want to be simply a supplier of feedstock. The developing world wants to be part of the process. It wants to produce its own sustainable aviation fuels. So on the panel here today, and it is very much a speed panel, we have got representatives from the investment community, from the production community, and in particular, Francis from Kenya, who is very keen to be a first mover. So what we want to do at the end of this session is we want to sign a contract that is going to say this is how it's going to happen. So let's start off with the perspective from the investors, and Bertrand, to talk a little bit from the CDPQ perspective as to what it is that investors need. We've already talked about regulatory certainty, we've talked about the removal of risk. What are the specifics with respect to developing countries that you need to assess to be able to say, look, this is a good prospect, let's put money into this, and bearing in mind that this is not his own money, this is other people's money, and so there is a particular fiduciary duty to make sure that there is good custodianship of that investment. Bertrand.
Thank you, and thank you for having me. So I represent CDPQ, a global investor, Quebec pension plan. We manage $420 billion and invest Canadian and invest across the world in infrastructure and all sorts of asset classes. I think I'd like to pick up on the previous panel, actually, and I thought it was very good because all the questions about finance were already answered. But there was one, the lady from United was sitting in this seat, I think, said, well, you know, it's unusual for us to commit to long-term contracts in the aviation fuel. It's unprecedented. Well, we're trying to do something unprecedented, and we do. We do expect some assistance from the airlines, in particular, to start, somewhat unprecedented behavior, at least to prime the pump. But once we have the long-term demand contracts, I think we need regulatory certainty in the countries in which those plants are going to be. And I fully agree, and I've been on another panel the other day, with the fact that it would be completely silly to start transporting biomass in huge volumes across the world. The plants need to be where the feedstock is. And so for that to happen, we need a clear government strategy about SAF, which covers not only the questions of, well, building an industrial plant, but most importantly, where's the supply chain going to come from? Who is going to produce this stuff? Where? How is it going to be brought to the plant? And those can be quite complex issues. Permits, committed tax regime, and I'm not asking for tax breaks, but at least tax certainty going forward, which would apply to both the investment regime, but also the questions of importing capital equipment, etc. Well, I spoke about the feedstock supply. The other thing we need is a committed technical partner. We're financial types. We don't know how to build a SAF plant or run a supply chain, and so we would expect technical partners to do that. It was raised a little bit earlier also, the questions of all these new developments from green tech people. That, in our view, is going to make it difficult to deploy capital at scale because it is very risky. The type of investments we're talking about is billion-dollar investments, very easily reached, and we have actually already financed a SAF investment in the US that uses municipal garbage to turn into SAF. And that is a billion-dollar investment. We've made a small commitment to it. But the point is we need de-risk technologies, at least to begin with. Innovation is great, it will happen, but if we expect innovation in an innovative country, doing innovative, that's just too much for pension plans at least, and the type of capital that we're asking. So really tried and tested to begin with, and then it's a small steps policy. Offtake agreement.
Bertrand, can I just stop you at that point, and we'll come back to these issues, because I'd like to just pick up now on the development of plant. You raised this question about untried technology. I think that there's a lot of experience now is being developed in that. So let's just pick up on that, because the specific on this panel is how do we get this into developing countries? Yeah. So the question then is to Pat is what are the perspectives and what are the challenges? And then we'll come to Francis about the regulatory environment there. Okay.
So whenever you look at these things, you just need to there's a couple absolutely true things that must be. Got to have a sustainable feedstock that's readily available, can be collected. It's got to be economical. This is incredibly important. It's got to be done in ecosystem thinking, because the cheapest raw materials, believe it or not, are those that are grown, the things that are plant sugars, and then oils, by far the cheapest. But that means that you're going to pay attention to land and agriculture, and that means you're going to be involved with agriculture and production of protein. This is incredibly important, and this paradigm of it's food versus fuel is absolutely wrong. If you're going to grow something and use land, you better be producing protein, because that helps the local economy, especially in developing countries. It also helps it in developed countries. You have to have that perspective. Make the soil better. That is important first. And to put this in perspective in cost, the raw material, the economics, the cost of production, cash cost of production works like this. HEFA, carbohydrates to alcohols to jet, those are in the low cost category. The next level of cost structure is going to be Fischer-Tropsch. The next one is PTL, many, many dollars more per gallon in production cost. You know what that means? Anything soon is we're going to be growing something. Therefore, it's incumbent upon us to get it done right, document it well, pay attention to it throughout. The technologies that are getting commercialized first are HEFA, alcohol to jet from carbohydrates. You are automatically engaged in production of food products in those systems. Automatically, that's part and parcel to it. So we go to a country, Kenya, it would be working with your farmers and agriculture and improving your food, improving the production, improving that whole ecosystem. And to think it's not that, you're kidding yourself. You have to pay attention and work with it all. The actual technologies to convert the oils and fats, done. Alcohols into hydrocarbon, done. We've been doing it since 2011, done. We know how to do that. That's not the problem, it's the financing. And now the next part. So we have one part, feedstocks, how do you get them? Next part, technology, done. The next one, who is going to pay for this? These things cost more than Petrojet. Who is actually going to do it? Yeah, well, no, I'm actually buy the product, the airlines. They can't afford the premiums, so it relies on government subsidies and some stuff. Who's going to be, what policy is going to support that increase of cost? And this is where the IRA bill did a good job on the CI points, being paid for CI reduction and all the rest. Who will pay for it, really? And will it be stable enough to secure investment from colleagues like this? How?
So let's talk a little bit about the regulatory environment, particularly. We'll focus on Kenya, and perhaps Francis, you could say a little bit about where your planning has got to, and what you're looking for to make it actually happen.
Thank you, Michael. I'm very happy to be in this panel. First, for Kenya, why we are progressing this, we already did a feasibility study in 2018, which have already shown there is potential. So there is already feedstock which is being evacuated from Kenya, that is castor oil and also used cooking oil. There is water municipal waste and also water hyacinth. So what we need now is to have a robust policy, a policy that is supporting in terms of feedstock certification from the refinery, how it will be going to be set. And also the next step is in terms of financing, in terms of de-risking. We need to have corporate who are already signing agreement in terms of taking the fuel. We need also the airline to have airline who have already made commitment that it's not only the domestic or local airline which are going to take the SAF. And that when we have corporate taking that, we are going to de-risk. Now come to the government. We need to have proper regulatory framework that guarantee that there will be tax incentive that will help to reduce the cost of investment. And with that, we are able to promote in terms of SAF production. And now in terms of, to add on what he has said, we need to look SAF production in terms of the whole value chain, in terms of the whole transport sector. When we are saying transport, let's not only look the issue of aviation, let's also look the issue of ground transport, where that we can also produce SAF as we do produce issue of biodiesel, which will be used by road transport. And this now will lead us to have a proper study showing the economic benefit to the government in terms of GDP contribution, and also the issue of how the farmers are also going to benefit in the whole value chain, the transport. And with that, it will make it a good business case, especially for Africa. When you say you want to do SAF, you also look the other benefit, not only the whole price, the final price, but the benefit, what is left on the ground from the farmers and other investors. So we find there is a full value chain which is needed. And lastly, we need also to have involvement of academia, because that's where the issue is. You find there is no technical knowledge on the ground. So we need to have our local academia, university involved. And with that, now I add other 3 C's, because we had 3 C, corporate, coalition, communication. So we need now coalition and capacity building to be able to move forward. Thank you.
So I'm going to ask Pat first, and then Bertrand. So Pat, do you have what you need now to go and build your plant in Kenya? And when you've heard the answer to that, Bertrand, are you ready to finance it?
No, we don't. It is simply because the security, it'd be about where do the feedstocks come from, how stable they'll be over the long run, what infrastructure exists for that to create those feedstocks, because you can't just poof them into existence. So there's work to be done there. So working in cooperation in Kenya, glad to. Learning how to set up the actual true data tracking from the ground and helping farmers with the data and then tracking it through, and then helping develop the energy infrastructure that's required. We need green energy, electricity, green gas. That's how you lower the footprint, make a more valuable, carbon negative SAF. That's going to be important. And then, of course, there's the whole education and all the rest. So would we do a project like that? We're interested in it. We're working in India with Praj, in partnership with India Oil and Praj, to make that happen. It's going all the way back to the farmers to help develop their economies. That thing can be done in Kenya too, but it takes partnerships to pull it together. And most importantly, someone better pay for the product at the end so people can put a project together and get it financed. And that's your cue.
Let me get my checkbook out. No, I would say, you look at our track record, our own track record. We have invested billions of dollars in green energy in India, in Brazil, in Mexico. So why not elsewhere? It depends on the structure. It depends on the de-risking mechanisms. There is also talk about blended finance, which could be helpful in certain countries to offset the risks that cannot be otherwise offset. So the ecosystem, I think the key aspect here is that we need to talk. Because we need to talk with governments, the questions of policy, we need to talk with the industrialists, we need to talk with the farmers, and then see, okay, well, those are the risks that are left. We need to talk with the airlines, we need commitments, and then see what risks are left and see how we can mitigate them. But the difficulty is not mitigating the risks. The difficulty is talking and creating the environment, the multi-stakeholder environment to actually get these things done.
Yeah, so this kind of echoes the comments from Annie Petsonk earlier on about the collaboration and communication. Is that I've got you three on the podium now. Everybody has got a will to take it forward, but each of you has got a sort of like a little bit of a logjam as to, how do we move from this goodwill, this commitment, to actual practice? And so, I mean, Francis, perhaps you could just say a bit more about what you as a government could do to provide the assurances that both the prospective investor is going to look for, and how can you provide the perspective to the fuel manufacturer to say, look, he has said to you, these are the things that I need to know before I can move forward. How can you provide that assurance?
Yeah, thank you. Based on our workshop that we held on September this year, on September 11 and 12, one of the resolutions we said one of it is to have a coalition which has partnership, that we have steering group that involve both investors, the airline, and the government, because there we can be able to talk and be able to unlock all the difficult that we are able to. With that, now we are developing a SAF policy and roadmap which is already linked to the production, that we don't have the investor coming to produce without someone who is off-taking the SAF. So we need to have proper coalition and partnership that involve all stakeholders, from transportation, from airport, that you cannot do one thing alone. So you have to have all people involved in the stakeholder that you can be able to move forward. And also bring in the issue of having a financing model that is be able to de-risk in terms of we have government contribution, other form of financing also included to ensure that we reduce the risk. Because if you look, currently the rating of investment in developing countries is very high. It's about, the discount rate is that 7.5 compared to developed country, which is only 15. And then you compare the interest rate, we have 5%, where in the developing countries about 13%. So you find it make the whole investment more costly. And that's why we need to have offtake or agreement or blended finance, which will make it easier. So key word here is partnership and coalition involving all stakeholders. Thank you.
Just a quick comment, and we're running out of time, as we always do. This question of offtake agreements was something that was raised by Lauren earlier. You don't demand an offtake agreement from a gas station. You just have people come up and fill their cars. So why do you need to have offtake agreements from airlines? Why can you not just assume, and that of course is projection and there's risk and all of that sort of stuff, but just assume that there are going to be aircraft coming to this country, they're going to refuel, So you know what the volume of traffic is going to be, you know what the volume of fuel is going to be, so why do you need specific offtake agreements from particular airlines?
So we're, of course, working on financing big plants, and the issue is we have to finance those plants to attract the equity and debt. You've got to have certainty of a return, at least so that the investor can say, oh, yes, it's reasonable, I'm willing to commit my investor's money into that. And you must have that. In order to do that, then you must know or have a picture of what your revenue and margins are over time, and that requires a long-term offtake agreement. That requires airlines to commit then to purchase the stuff. And of course, this is the tough issue because no one knows exactly what that value of carbon is in the long run, because that's actually what we're talking about. All of these products are going to be at a premium when oil's cheap like it is today. It's going to be at a premium to Petrojet.
Yep.
Who is going to step up and say, I commit that many $1 billion off my balance sheet? Which airlines have a strong enough balance sheet to do that? That's a tough question in and of itself. So that's why the government is so important. Government policies and programs are so important to help get it started. Yeah. It will not occur otherwise, maybe with the exception of a couple airlines could step up and do that.
I think you have to look at what happened with renewables in the last 20, 30 years. There were long-term agreements to buy the power from governments or from state-owned utilities at a price that was above the odds. It launched the industry, and this is what we need to do. We need to prime the pump. They may not be needed, long-term agreements may not be needed in 10 years once it has become such cookie-cutter approach that it's de-risked. But at the beginning, we need that. And there was also a question about the cost. To me, if you say, okay, well, you blend 5% of SAF and achieve that goal, and that SAF, let's assume, is 50% more expensive than normal jet fuel, well, it's a cost increase of 2.5%, if I'm right. If my math is correct. Big deal.
Yeah.
It's doable.
So we have run out of time. This conversation needs to continue, but not on this stage. So thank you to my panelists. Thank you all for your attention. I think that this has been a very productive discussion, and let's keep it going. Thank you. Thank you all.